Hello there, I am Man in Yellow, and today I'm going to be talking a bit about release notes for the patch 1.12 in Phobies, which is the newest patch that they just showed, I think, yesterday and maybe the day before. So, with the release 1.12, we are bringing some big updates to our event system and some new tools to help players maximize their event experience. So, they are updating events essentially. What they're doing is they are adding faction packs, which means whenever you have a event for a specific faction, you will be getting packs for that kind of faction, essentially. So you have a chance to acquire faction packs while events are active. These packs include a near guaranteed chance to acquire phobies from the faction featured in the active event. That doesn't mean that you are going to get a new phobie 97% of the time, I don't believe. That just means that you are much more likely to see monsters, for example. If you have a monster event, you're not going to be getting that many new phobies, I don't think. It will be essentially the same as with the 800 and Dreadful pack. I can't actually remember the name of the 800 pack. What is its name again? The Horrific pack. So they will be similar to the Horrific and the Dreadful pack, as you can see here, and have the same rates, except you will be getting whichever race it is. At least that's as far as I understood this thing. So the first update will be Monster Mash, which means it will be a monster event, obviously. And I believe it will come in like 3 or 4 days from this video. I think it was the 3rd or something like that. Maybe I misremember. I think they also wrote that somewhere in here. It's probably later on. But you will, of course, like have ones for the other factions too. So when you have an undead event, it will be packs for undeads and so on. I think this is a pretty good thing for them to add because it makes it a little bit more like, makes it feel more like an event as compared to before. Because now you are getting packs that are specific to that race and stuff like that, which is pretty nice. Then here's the updated event calendar. They will be going on a 4-week cycle starting February the 3rd, which was what I was just talking about. And then, you get more rewards and so on. You can also buy through the event and stuff like that. I'm not really interested in this stuff because I don't buy anything in Phobies. I'm still free to play. So I'm like not interested in all of this, but this may be relevant for some people. If you want to like go all out and get the ultimate VIP pass, or if you are on holiday and then you come back to an event and you want to skip ahead so that you can get the stuff still, in case you can buy the milestone stuff, might be relevant to some people. This down here is what I really care about though. We have the Phobies balancing. This is obviously where you want to look if you want to know how the game changes. So first off, we have Billy being reduced from 1700 to 1600 health. I believe they already went live with these changes? Question mark? Believe so. Where's Billy in here? This was 16 and it was 17 before, I believe. Yes, so they are already live. I think Billy was definitely in need of a nerf. I don't know if this is the nerf that will do it, to be honest. I'm not sure if that is going to be what really makes this phobia good or bad, to be honest. The really broken thing with Billy is just that you get free poke and you can snipe very far away from your vault, and that doesn't really address either of those issues. So I think Billy will still be really strong, but at least they are like tuning it down a tiny bit. Not a big deal though, losing 100 health on it there. You are probably still going to be playing Billy if you have Billy, because I still think that is like, maybe it's slightly below S tier now, but it's at least up there. It's probably still S tier, to be honest. It's just low S tier. But it's very, very, very strong still. Like, it is very hard to deal with. We have Broodwurst getting a 300 health buff. I don't think this will matter at all. I think Broodwurst is just way too bad to ever see any real play. Where is it again? Up here. This card is just horrible, even with 300 more health. It's just awful. It's a 1 move, 1 range. I mean, it's basically bad sushi, right? Like 1 move, 1 range, AoE thing. You will never connect this. You're just going to kite it. And if you connect it, you're going to connect it on something that doesn't matter because they will just block your path. It's way too hard to make work. I know you can like try and Phantom or some weird stuff like that, but that's just not worth going with brute worst for. Why would you ever do that when you can just kaboom with Phantom instead? It's way better. So I predict that will still be quite a terrible phobia even with 300 more health, which is usually a pretty big buff. We have Cecilia, which just went up with 100 attack, and that of course also means that the dimensional passive will deal extra damage. This is still not a good phobia. Doesn't really change whether this is playable or not, it's still trash. That's really all I have to say about it. This is just not good enough stats for a 6 cost, even with the 100 extra attack power. Like, it's the same as the Hoovy now, and that's just not good enough combat stats if we're talking pure combat stats, in my opinion. So I wouldn't go for this ever, and the ability really isn't worth very much. So I think Cecilia is going to keep on being pretty bad as a phobia, even with 100 more attack power. I don't think that's going to make a big difference. So far the ability change has been good. The other ones are kind of irrelevant in my opinion. Then we have a change to Klopster here, and this is kind of a question mark in my opinion, because Klopster was never really like strong or overpowered. It was like a decent phobia that you would go for when you are pushing into the opponent's territory, and then you would like use the ability to move forward quickly so that you could join the fight faster. It's kind of the same idea as Mr. Tramples. You just have a very fast phobia that can quickly join your team while you are fighting on the opponent's side of the map. And we can see here that they took 100 health off of him. He's probably still going to fulfill his purpose in like being a fast phobia that you use for that pretty easily. That's not going to make that huge of a difference. But I also don't think there was any reason to nerf him here. I don't think Klopster is that great of a phobia. I have, like, whenever I look at this, it kind of gives me a feeling that they're just nerfing phobies based on their win rate without thinking about why they have that win rate. Because you pretty much only go Klopster when you are, like, pushing ahead of the opponent and you want to push your advantage further. So this is like a win more card in a way, which means most people that go Klopster are probably like more likely to win than if they were summoning something else, right? Like, you are only going Klopster when you are in a good position most of the time. So that kind of makes his win rate probably better than he actually is. So I don't really know that he needed this nerf, to be honest. I think that is unnecessary, to be honest. And the exact same thing can actually be said for the next one, the Collector, who is being reduced with 100 health. I don't think this was necessary either. I can't even remember if I've played against a Collector in a very, very long time. I don't think that phobia is very strong, to be honest. I don't even think it's really that good as far as high key phobias go. Like, if we look at Collector down here, where is he there? The Collector is really not that high statted for an 8 cost, and he's a melee phobia. And like, yeah, the ability can be kind of powerful if you manage to hit it on multiple enemies, but that's rather hard to do. And he is like pretty easy to dodge or block or whatever. And even when you are going in and you're reducing like 2 enemies' actions, he's likely to still die because you're moving in with a melee phobia that the opponent wants to focus. I don't think he was really deserving that nerf. To be honest, I can't remember the last time I saw a Collector in one of my games. I think I've seen like 1 or 2 since like the buff to his movement. So I don't think he's very, very deserving of that nerf. Doc Holiday, on the other hand, very much needed a nerf. This phobia was insanely powerful. Like, it was better than the Billy in my opinion. This phobia was really, really, really disgusting. And they took 200 health away from it, which is a huge deal because it's already not got that much health. That said, I don't know if this solves the issue with this phobia. You can still bring it very early on and the opponent can't really walk into you without losing their phobies, just like to pretty much any pull that it does. Like, if you bring this early on a large map with just a couple 1 keys, you can easily pull in stuff like Gin Stings and just one-hit them with the Doc Holiday. Because Doc Holiday still has very high attack power. The ability doesn't have a long cooldown. It's very long range. Like, you can't really walk up to it early on. And once you get past the early game, you can't walk up to it either because then they have actual fighters beside the Doc Holiday. So I still think this phobia is going to be very strong, but 200 health is a lot, like, to lose there. So it's probably going to tune it down a little bit. It's going to be easier to like set up a kill or threaten the Doc Holiday to make it move back or something like that. At least that's my prediction. Then we have Mistletoe, which got 300 health, which is a kind of wild amount, to be honest. That is a very large amount of health to be given as a phobia. Can't even remember, was it a 5 key? I think it was a 5 key. Maybe I don't even have it in here. Let me just check if I can find it in the wiki. Then I can pull it over here instead. That would make more sense to do, since I don't think I have it in my collection. I don't think I've seen it in the game a single time, which says a little bit about the phobia. So Mistletoe is one of the newer phobies. Yeah. Stupid cookies. It's one of the newer phobies, and it has like the spell thing where when one of your phobies is killed after you use this on it, it will kill the enemy phobia. I don't really know if 300 health solves its issues, but it does certainly help a lot. 300 health is a lot of health. Like, that is like a full attack a lot of the time. Like, that's a big deal to get that for free. So it's probably going to be a little bit better, but honestly, I think it was pretty awful before. So I don't know if getting better is, like, a bit better is enough. Because, like, I just feel like you can only ever go for this in some rather niche late game scenarios. And for those, maybe it's good, but outside of those, it's kind of hard to make work. Like, if the opponent is sitting on 3 big phobies and you have a Mistletoe, maybe it's pretty good. Then you, like, put the Mistletoe on a very high power phobia and you walk into the enemy and they can't kill it without losing one of their big things. That could maybe be kind of viable, but it's also very high cost if you look at it. Like, that is a lot of keys for a phobia that doesn't really get to fight. Like, 5 keys for one range 1300 health phobia. That needs to do something very powerful, and it really doesn't. Like, if we just look at some of the other 5 keys, like maybe Phantom, look at this thing's combat stats. They're better, and the ability is insanely powerful. It's gonna have a kind of hard time matching up to phobies like that, even with this buff. That said, Phantom is still disgustingly broken, so, I mean, like, it's a bit of a hard comparison for pretty much any phobia in the game. Then we have Ogre, who just got another 100 health. I think this is like the 2nd or 3rd Ogre buff, if I remember correctly. Still not a fantastic phobia, but it's like, it's getting there by now. It's getting so many stats that it's kind of looking viable at this point. Like, that is a lot of health and attack if you are in the hard range. I still have a bit of the issue where, like, is that really what you want if you are low on hard health? I don't know, but it's certainly gotten to the point where this is a lot of stats now. So maybe Ogre is a bit more viable. We have Paddles, who is getting a lot of buffs, which he very much deserves. He got 200 health and 200 damage to electricals, 100 damage to normal phobies. That's a pretty large upgrade. Is it better than Shovel? No, Shovel is still gonna be better most of the time, but now you can at least think about bringing Paddles with, like, Smiley or the Glob. That's kind of the only ones you're going to be bringing Paddles with, but it could be pretty good with those. Maybe like on some hard or some large maps where you can bring High Five, Rush, you can maybe still bring it, but there the stats don't really matter much. But it's certainly nice to see him get a little bit more help. I still feel like he could have gotten 1000 or maybe even 1100. Like, he's a 4 cost without really anything to his name because the Shovel is just broken compared to him. So it's kind of sad. The only time you're really going to be using this is with Glob, realistically. Then we have one of the weirdest changes I've seen. They nerfed Rocket Man. Nobody is using Rocket Man. I'm using it as a meme at times, like for fun in some late game scenarios, but that's not a good phobia. Let me just be clear. Rocket Man was not good before. He's certainly not better with 100 less health. Like, this phobia is not a strong one at all. This is not even like top 30 phobies. Don't even think it's top 50 or top 60, to be honest. It is far down. Like, I don't know why they're nerfing this. Maybe it had a positive win rate and that's why. I don't know. But I mean, I don't think I've seen a single opponent go for Rocket Man in Song of All Fears. It's only been me playing it for fun. I don't see this phobia at all, so I don't know why that's getting nerfed. Really, he should be getting buffed, if anything. So, no idea why they did that. We have a Smiley who is getting 400 health. That is a ton of health from that phobia. Does Smiley need this? No. But, I mean, Smiley is better now, I guess. It's still something that where, like, people are gonna bring it when they don't have any point in bringing it, and the win rate is still not gonna be that great on it. Because, like, that, let's be honest, that's why they're changing this phobia too. I have a feeling they're just changing things depending on the win rates, instead of thinking over, like, why do they have higher low win rates. But Smiley having a lower win rate would make a lot of sense, because he's the kind of phobia that a lot of players go for when they shouldn't go for him. Like, they see a boss and they instantly go, oh, I should go Smiley, even though the opponent is sitting on, like, Attractor and Hevo, and it's a large map and you're not going to reach the boss ever. Or maybe they're just going to invade and not care about the Smiley. A lot of the time I've had opponents go Smiley while I'm playing boss specifically, because you played a lot of boss before, right? And it just doesn't work most of the time. If the boss player just, like, forces on you and goes all in, you're going to lose the fight, because you spent 5 keys on a phobia that can't attack. The Smiley is not good enough for that. You need very specific enemies for Smiley to be super good. Now, in some specific scenarios, Smiley is low-key kind of broken, but those are kind of hard to hit. So I don't really know about this buff, because it's just like, he's still not going to be that great in the scenarios where he wasn't great before, and in the scenarios where he was already kind of strong, he is going to be very, very rough to deal with now, because 400 health is a decent chunk extra. So, yeah, I guess if your opponent is going for only dimensionals and undeads or something, maybe you go Smiley, and you can kind of do some things. Especially if they have a lot of, like, melee phobies, you can kind of do that. But don't see the opponent going boss, and then they are sitting on Innocuous Gonzo and a Bone Mangles, and you go, oh, I should go Smiley. No, you shouldn't. Not if they have Repeller either. That hard counter Smiley. Like, you need some very specific scenarios for that phobia to be great. Then we have Undertaker here, who has... This might be the biggest buff ever, I think. This is probably the largest buff they have ever done to a phobia, actually, now that I think about it. They're reducing its cost by 2 keys. That is a wild amount. Like, you can think about how much of a difference that would make on some other phobies, right? So that is a ridiculous amount. So he went from being a 9 key to being only a 7 key, which means his win rate must have been absolutely atrociously bad. So Undertaker is now a 7 key. That means he is a lot better now. I think he was kind of like middle of the road, kind of, if you used him with specifically blue before. Now you can probably use him with both blue and the glob and be very happy about it. Because those, like, you have way more keys to spend, so you have a bit of an easier time actually getting it out and stuff like that. I still think that blue is probably the best thing you can use with it. Like, this is just a very powerful combo with the Undertaker, but the glob can also be pretty good. And even something like a Hydra is similar to the glob. But Hydra or glob could be used as like a phobia that you bring out from the Undertaker whenever the opponent tries to go in and fight you. So, like, the opponent walks up with a Jin Sting, you summon a Hydra, you double hit them, the Jin Sting is dead. That's a kind of powerful defensive thing you could do. But most of the time you're going to be playing around blue. The big downside to this is, of course, you have to play blue first, which is not that, like, easy of a phobia to get value out of most of the time. But you can kind of probably make it work, I would say. And the thing you have to remember is that blue with Undertaker is very powerful. It's essentially like a stronger Bad Omen that you can much easier hit. Like, it's way easier to hit. You can walk forward 2 spaces, then put the blue in front of the Undertaker and then fly twice. That is like insane range for debuffing the enemy. So that is a pretty powerful combination. But again, you have to play blue first, so I still don't think it's broken or anything. But this is definitely taking it from being like a kind of whatever mediocre phobia to being at least in the like maybe strong tier, I would say. Somewhere around there, I would guess. That is how big of a buff this is. You can very easily think your way to this being a strong buff. Like, imagine if they made Hevo 3.07 keys. That would be disgustingly broken, obviously. So that's a very big buff to it. Then last here we have Whiskers, who just got a decent health buff. He definitely needed that. I think Whiskers was really, really bad. I still don't think it's a great phobie, even with this amount of extra health, which is a pretty significant amount of bonus health for a 3 key. But it's a lot better now. It's 250 health higher, which is a very big deal for a 3 cost phobie. So that's definitely a big buff there. And you will probably see it at times now, whenever the opponent goes for, like, what's it called, a lot of trappers. You can probably go for this now. This is like a decent anti-trapper at this point. It's still not fantastic or anything, but it is very low cost for a neophobe or whatever this ability is called. The thing that allows you to reveal traps. It's a pretty low cost for that if the opponent is playing like Poison Ivy with another trapper or Fire Ant or something. This can probably be pretty decent. I think it's definitely way better than Doom now, after the buff. That said, I still think that the best anti-trappers in the game are going to be Tickles and probably also Unicorn. Those are just very good at removing traps. Tickles is insanely good because it's only 1 key. You can still throw it away for capturing panic points after. And very importantly, you just have to guess where the traps are, which is pretty easy. And if you guess incorrectly, you normally can guess where the trap is then. Like, there's only really ever 1 or 2, maybe 3 spaces where you think the trap will be on. So if you already have got that down, it's pretty easy to figure out with the Tickles. So I still think that's the best like anti-trap tool in the game. But it definitely makes Whiskers a lot more viable. So just to recap, Billy nerf, that's good. I don't know if it solves the issue, but the phobie definitely needed a nerf. Broodwurst and Cecilia, nobody cares. That's not enough to make them viable. Clubster and the Collector, I don't think they needed this nerf. I think they were fine before. I think maybe even the Collector could have gotten buffed. Probably not. It was probably just fine in the position it was in before. But they definitely didn't need to be nerfed, at least not for higher rank players. Is probably very strong in like low ranks where people don't know how to kite or block enemies. Their Collector could probably be very strong, so that might be why it got nerfed. We also have to consider like the more normal or casual players' experience a little bit. You can't just like let this run free and destroy low ranking players, because that's not very fun. Doc Holiday, it definitely needed a nerf. Again, I don't know if this solves the issue, but it is a pretty big nerf, which is very much deserved. Mistletoe, this is a pretty big buff, but I still don't think Mistletoe is going to be great. I think it's just not really worth going for a phobie with that low stats compared to what the ability actually does. Like, Phantom costs the same amount of keys, has way better combat stats, and the ability is way more powerful. So I don't really see this seeing much play. Ogre, it's definitely getting to the point now where you can start considering going for it. I will definitely be looking out for if my heart health is low and whether Ogre may be a viable choice at some point, because by now he's kind of getting to the point where he's pretty viable. He's probably rising to like middle or higher end of the above average tier, I would say. He's like pretty decent now, if he wasn't already there. I can't actually remember where I placed him last time, but he's definitely pretty decent at this point. He's like actually better than the what's it called? Is it Sparky or Sappy? I think it's Sparky. He's better than that now when the ability is activated, and he can of course also go against non-mechs, so it's pretty good. Pedals, this is a pretty big buff. I still think the shovel is better though, so you will only really see this when the opponent or when you are playing the Glob or maybe Smiley in some rare instances if you really need the Smiley to connect. Rocketman didn't need this nerf at all. Like, this is a ridiculous nerf. I don't know why they're doing that. I would love it if they added explanations to why they're doing the nerfs in the patch notes, because this makes absolutely zero sense to me, if I have to be honest. This phobie is trash. Even before the nerf, it was trash. It's like, look at any tier list from a high ranking player. This will be in like the bad tier or trash tier even. It is not a good phobie at all. Smiley buff, this is probably just a buff out of win rate because too many people are playing Smiley when they shouldn't. The phobie was fine before. It's still going to be pretty good. It's just like good when you have a good case for it. It's a situational phobia essentially, and this makes it slightly better for the situation where it's good. Probably doesn't do much to fix like it being bad against specific enemies. Like you're still going to get rolled if the opponent is sitting on a repeller and a gonzo or something like that. Undertaker, huge buff. This phobia is going to be way more viable now, which I think is a great thing. It was probably pretty bad. It was probably also underleveled when people were playing it, which may also like have made it seem even worse than it was. But this definitely helps it a lot. And then Whiskers is probably like semi-viable as a anti-trapper now if the opponent is putting a lot of keys into traps. Also, I would just mention, I think this is good that they're doing the faction pack stuff. I will have to see how it actually is, how many you get, like what their awards look like and stuff like that before I can say if this is like a huge improvement to the game or if it's just like a flavor thing. But either way, I like the change. And that is pretty much all I have for this patch. I would say as far as like balance changes goes, this is probably one of the weaker patches, I would say. I would have loved to see some nerfs for some of the like Repeller, Innocuous, Attractor still. I still think those are kind of ridiculous phobies. Attractor should probably be 800 health. Innocuous should maybe be 700. The Repeller should probably have a cooldown more on its ability, or turn cooldown more, so that it's 2 turns. I think those changes would definitely help the game a lot, and I think they are pretty obvious to make because all of those phobias are kind of ridiculous and probably showing up a lot, even though they're not actually all that fun, in my opinion. Like, they are kind of boring phobies, to be honest. So I think it would be good to like make some changes to those, but hey, I'm happy as long as I see some changes because that is good for the game. Anyways, that was all I had for this like patch rundown or whatever you want to call it. Let me know what you think about the patch or if there was anything I missed during this or something in the comments. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.